Good morning and welcome to the Rewind Show, the Sunday supplement, 251. No football this weekend for the Borough, but of course there's always going to be a Rewind Show. My name's Steve Brown, and over there at the View this morning, got quite comfy in that position over the last couple of weeks and months, is Brent Peters. How you doing?
I'm okay, Steve. How are you? I'm okay. I'm better than the weather. The weather's atrocious.
Absolutely horrible this morning, mate.
It's atrocious. I don't know what it's like where you are, but here we've had overnight snow that's turned to heavy rain. But when it turned to heavy rain, it was freezing. So you can imagine the roads and the paths are absolutely horrendous because they haven't been gritted. So they're like black ice. And then I've got here to the View, and I'm looking out of the window, overlooking the ground, and it's like being on looking out on what you tell me that name of that Lincoln not Lake.
You said Lake Combo. I said no, Lake Como. You mean?
Yeah, well, whatever it is, but that's what it's like out there. It's just an absolute lake. Yeah, so it's crap weather, but we're here and we can talk everything football.
Well, we're not going to be, there's no lack of entertainment this morning, is there? There's no lack of stories that have been making the press over the last week or so, and no more so than your beloved Manchester United. What a shambles down there at Old Trafford, Brent.
It's a complete shambles. I mean, one thing I've got to say before we get right into the nitty-gritty here, and one thing that really proves a point in, forget Manchester United for a minute, but one thing that really proves a point about football and tactics, Man United over recently, I mean, since Ruben Amorim's been there, the press have had something to hang their blinking hats on about this, that he won't change his style and, this 3-4-3 formation and everything else, and he's stubborn and giving it all that. End of the day, listen, it's nothing to do with tactics. It's nothing to do with team shape, right? It proves the point when a manager, or not a manager, a standing manager, when Darren Fletcher's took the group to Burnley and he changed the shape with the same group of players, and it was still relevantly, from Manchester United standards, a shit show.
Yeah,
it was a shit show with the same players. Let's get one thing straight. So that proves a point, and should prove a point to everybody. It's not the 3-4-3, or it's not the blinking 4-2-3-1 formation. It's the players that's been asked to go out on that pitch and demonstrate their ability within those team shapes. It's pretty obvious that no matter what team shape you set up, those players at the level that they're playing in just aren't good enough. Yeah. So that comes down to recruitment.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to recruitment, but it also comes down to the character of the players, and if there's any leaders in that team, which I don't think there actually is.
Well, I don't think it's just that there's no leaders in the team, Steve. I don't think there's any leaders at Manchester United.
Yeah,
and that's where it starts.
Yeah.
In any football club, it's got to start to the top and come down. And if it's not right at the top, it certainly won't be right at the bottom.
Yeah.
So you've got a situation at Manchester United. Let's backtrack, and everybody will have opinions. And don't forget, if you're talking about, let's talk about, if you were talking about Accrington Stanley, right, you'd only be talking about a fan base of about what I don't know what their average gate is now, Accrington, but let's say
7,000 tops.
Yeah. So you're talking about a fan base of 6,000-7,000, right? At Manchester United, you're talking about a fan base of 70-odd thousand plus the global attraction away from Manchester United. That's the fans that go into the ground. You're talking about a lot of numbers in terms of the traction that Manchester United bring towards them. So when you're talking about opinions, and everybody has an opinion, right? At Accrington Stanley, the opinions won't be as collective as what an opinion is at Manchester United. It's going to be blinking treble, quadrupled. There's just going to be loads of blinking on top of that. Do you follow me? Yeah. So the simple fact is, right, everybody has opinions, right? And everybody will turn around and say, this should happen, that should happen, we shouldn't get foreign, we want the best in class, we want a foreign coach in, let's go for these. Now, let's stop there, in my opinion. Now, listen, I'm a diehard man. If I weren't running a football club and I wasn't the manager of a football club, where would I be spending my Saturdays? I'd be watching Manchester United. There is no two ways this puts or maybes. Correct. Right? That's where I'd be. Right? Now, I've watched with interest the progression of Manchester United since the days when, I was stood on the Stretford end, and I mean proper Stretford end, when it was the Stretford end, right? And gradually, as I've grown up, and you know this because you've been going through the history of my life regarding writing this book, so
there's always United turning up.
There's always Man United turning up. And the thing is in that as well, I've been blessed with the people that, with my progression and my pathway in my life that's taken me, and it's taken me in connection and in contact with some influential people, not more than at Manchester United. Yeah. And I'm blessed to the fact that I've kind of worked with people that I respect, that's been at Manchester United, not more than Wilf McGuinness, to the point that when my daughter, who's 5 years older than Martin, my son, was growing up, both of them, more so Natalie, she'd always call, she got to the stage where she was calling Wilf McGuinness Uncle Wilf. That's how close kind of we were, if you follow the logic.
Used to see him.
Yeah, exactly. So she was calling him Uncle Wilf, and then there were times where, we've gone to the cliff, and Paul McGuinness, Will's son, has taken our Martin and played some football and done some brief coaching sessions with Martin at the cliff. So we've been privileged to be in places where a lot of people wouldn't even be able to tread.
Yeah.
So gradually, you build this relationship. I've been lucky enough to be inside Manchester United. I've been lucky enough to meet a lot of influential people at Manchester United, and I'm blessed with that. And it's something that'll stick with me for the duration of my life. Now, I
suppose as well, when you do get that opportunity, Brent, like you have, you've been on the inside, you get to see things close up, which then gives you a greater insight, doesn't it, into what's going on at the club?
Well, yeah, you do, and there's things that that you see, and you just and the daft thing is, and it is the daft thing, because we're like now where I'm sat in Bacup. I'm sat 40 minutes away from Old Trafford. There's kids that's growing up around Bacup that all they hear and see is Manchester United, and they see it on television, and but they've never been anywhere near the Theatre of Dreams. They'd be in awe if they went down there. And equally, they see people like now in modern day, Bruno, they'll see, because he's well documented back in the day when it was me, it was Law Best in Charlton, but when you see these people in flesh and down there, it's just like me and you, seeing me and you in the street. Yeah. It's no different, and they're everyday people. There's nothing. It's just that the papers and the TVs and everything just make them greater and build everything up greater than what it is. But going back to the days of when I was growing up, and around Manchester United and being close to people at Man United, and it's not just like Wilf McGuinness. You look at even, to a point that Walter Joyce, the late Walter Joyce who I worked with, he ended up being at Manchester United on the coaching staff. Yeah. Along with his son Warren Joyce, and I were close to these people. These people I were close with, and on top of that, you've got the people like Tommy Docherty, who was I probably wasn't as close as I was with Walter and Warren and Wilf, but I nevertheless I were rubbing shoulders and I were close enough to him. You follow me? So consequently, I've been at close hand. I've been to cup finals. I've been and I've watched. I was never bothered who. And back in the day when I started, the people that was involved in running Manchester United was Louis Edwards, who was the meat man from Collyhurst, not far from Manchester City's stadium, right? And you never really was bothered who were involved at Manchester United at that side of things. No. All I was interested in, and all everybody were interested in, was seeing the likes of Best Law, Charlton, Styles, people of that ilk in flesh.
Yeah. And it was all about what happened on the pitch and nothing to do with what's going on in the boardroom, where now these guys are kind of taking centre stage and being a part of the show.
Exactly. And if you go through, when at that time, and even further on, if you think about it, who was, when Sir Matt Busby was the key figure at Manchester United. And then from Sir Matt Busby, there was a period of time where Wilf McGuinness took over the reins. And then Sir Matt Busby had to come out of retirement because it just wasn't, they weren't at the level where they felt that they should be when Wilf were the manager. And then Sir Matt comes back in, and then from Sir Matt they make an appointment. I don't know, not in order of what it were, but like I think it was like Frank O'Farrell came in, who was a top British manager at the time. And then when things didn't work out with Frank O'Farrell, they go and get somebody who was well thought of in terms of Dave Sexton. So Dave
there were a lot of bouncing around from manager to manager.
Yeah, exactly, but they were all kind of like British. This foreign situation. We're never in the main, and it's like anything else. What's happening is in time. And it's the same way I think England and the FA have lost their way with in terms of the football DNA. When you think about England, and I keep harping on about this, England won the World Cup in 1966. Right, those players weren't coached in terms of coaching like they are today, and like really blinking absolutely brainwashed with coaching methods. They were trained. They were trainers. They had to be fit, but they had to be organised. Fit and organised.
Natural ability.
And natural ability. But everybody, when you say natural ability, there was a team and different people had to slot into that team shape with varying different attributes. The best way I can say is, would you class as, Nobby Stiles as a world-class player? No, you wouldn't, not in technical ability. Bobby Moore, you might class as a world-class player because of the way he were and his calmness. But Nobby Stiles were kind of...
It was
his work rate, and he would stop the world-class players. So there was a balance in the team. But what's happened is, over time, for whatever reason, England have lost, instead of carrying on in the way that they were and the way things were going, they start looking at the model from overseas, and then start to imitate an overseas model, and then when they followed the overseas model,
our overseas model ain't as good as their overseas model.
No, exactly, and I mean, what did they always say about the British? It were always British Bulldog and the British Bulldog spirit, whereas probably overseas and the overseas model were more methodical, more relaxed, and more more kind of controlled, if you will. But they decided to go down that line, and then obviously when you've got UEFA and FIFA coming involved as an organisation, more and more they kind of lent towards how things were going on and how things was evolving from overseas. So like where you start then operating a sporting director. Because because that's the way their model were a sporting director. But that was never the case in this country. What was the case in this country? The manager would be appointed and he would be answerable to the chairman of the board of the football club. Yeah. So the manager would then have sole responsibility to bring in his own trusted staff that he works with, right? And would have a big say on the recruitment of the players he wanted.
Well, mostly, probably 99.9% of the time, he will be in charge of the hiring and the firing.
Correct. Exactly, Steve. That's exactly right. So then what's happened next? But then gradually, if we go back to the England setup, we've gone all them years, we've never won the World Cup since 1966. Right, so you've got to ask yourself a question from a country that's kind of always led the way and been at the forefront of football. Why have we lost our way like we've lost our way, and why have we been so close at times, but then so far? And it's because we've not. I have a firm belief in even now, even at Bacup Borough, I've said that certain things that we've implemented, more not on the field, but more off the field, I've said that we've taken the lead and others have followed. Yeah. And I think that's how it should have been. England, Britain takes the lead, others follow. Not the other way about. We're like sheep and we go and follow others.
Yeah, there was nothing wrong with the structure. There was nothing wrong with the principles and the values of how we play football. But for some reason, we wanted to go and follow what's going on the continent. And I think that's become our downfall.
I 100%. I think that's our downfall. And I think that, that's where I'm coming from. And so consequently, when you think over the years, so we go back to Manchester United. So over the years, you've got a chairman that appoints managers, and then they appoint a manager that's answerable to the board. But the model seems to be working all right. And then, we come to later years, and then you get somebody like Sir Alex Ferguson that gets appointed, which is the same principle. So Alex Ferguson, no different. He's answerable to the board. Now behind the scenes there were different things that were going on. Obviously, your Martin Edwards, which was obviously Martin was the son of Louis Edwards, the late Louis Edwards. So Martin takes over the reins, and then it comes to be it's a global. People are wanting to buy it, so that evolved. Sky got involved, and they would do one thing about Murdoch were trying to buy it, and other people were trying to buy it because it was that. Now, so there's all things like this going on behind the scenes, and it ended up where gradually in time that Sir Alex Ferguson became a very important member of the hierarchy of Manchester United. Wasn't at the beginning. He was like any other manager, but gradually in time he had a lot to say. And on top of Sir Alex Ferguson, there was a guy there, and I met him a few times, because at the time, when we're now in this era, away from kind of, my contacts with Wilf McGuinness and the likes, I've now got a situation that's, he wasn't at the time, but I've now got a situation that my son-in-law, but he wasn't my son-in-law at the time, but his son, Matty, is coming through the ranks at Manchester United. So there was times when I go down to Carrington with Linton and watch games, and obviously when I were down there, I bump into people people like who we're talking about. And what had happened is, because his lad was playing in the same group as Matty. You know, so it was like, it's just like me and you talking now. Yeah. So it gradually in a situation, but the terms of like running Manchester United, so it was common knowledge that Sir Alex and Mr. Gill were like running Manchester United, and there was nothing wrong with that situation, you know. But then gradually, what's happened is, for whatever reason, you know, I'm not privy to the reasons, but they'll have the reasons. You know, the board decided to bring, you know, I think if you look back, you probably have the names there. They brought that guy in
from Chelsea.
Chelsea.
Kenyon came in.
Yeah, Kenyon came in, and gradually, like, you know, John, they took a backward seat to the point where Sir Alex were now looking at retirement. Now, this is where I think there's been a massive mistake made at Manchester United. Massive mistake. If they keep talking about today, about people, it's not the Manchester United way. Manchester United way has always been, we go back to Busby Babes, we've always had the youth, we've had the babes, you know, it's always been about the youth and youth progression. It's always been about the way that Manchester United evolved itself in terms of the DNA and the way that they play and everything else. So if that's the case, in my opinion, as Sir Alex is thinking of kind of taking a backward seat, would it not have made more sense? You know, and obviously people are going to have their opinions now because we all know the answer. But at the time, probably it was like getting to the point of near enough coming into retirement age. Well, you can talk about plenty of players that's gone on to manage. You know, you can talk about Mark Hughes. You know, you can talk about Steve Bruce that went on to manage. You can talk about even, I'm sure Brian Robson went on to manage.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he went to Middlesbrough. You know, so these people. So what I'm saying is gradually, there's obviously people within that have the Manchester United DNA that's in the setup and one name that springs to mind, right, that wanted to, obviously, listen, I'm not here to talk about people's personal lives and what's gone on. I'm here to talk about football. But one of the people that I'm talking about was Ryan Giggs. And obviously, Ryan Giggs had made a big thing that he wanted to, you know, take up managing. And for me, he was a Fergie fledgling, you know, like he knew the Fergie way, he knew the Man United way, but he knew what Manchester United were all about. So would it not have made sense, in my opinion? Fergie didn't even need to announce anything. All he needed to do was just have, initially in the early stages, is have somebody like Giggs outside of him, Giggs working with him, Giggs like shadowing him, you know, and just watching and not make no announcements, no nothing. Nobody knows anything. But what he's doing in his own inimitable little way and style, he's kind of grooming Giggs.
And passing the baton on. Yeah.
Passing it on and grooming him to become the next manager of Manchester United, which then would keep the DNA and everything about Man United keep going within the family.
It'd also keep all this work that Fergie done since he became manager. He created a new blueprint for Manchester United, a successful one. But it seems as soon as he's left the building, they've gone and ripped this up.
Well, it seems like that to me. But they've ripped it up because they've brought people in. Now, this is where it comes from the top. They've brought people in, and I know there's all this going on about the Glazers, and we should. But listen. Again, this is another political issue. Does it really matter? You know, if Man United, surely as a supporter of Manchester United or Burnley, because Burnley's part of this as well now. What I'm going to say, all you're bothered about is Are you bothered about a balance sheet that doesn't look right? Are you bothered, or are you more bothered about
what happens between 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock?
Exactly, that you're winning football matches against your arch rivals, and that you're entertaining, and then you're heading to a cup final, or you're pushing for to win the league, or you're knocking on the door of Europe. That's what it must all be about, not about like, oh, well, they're thieving out of this, and they're investing, and they're taking all our money, and they're doing this and doing that. If they're still providing money, or if Manchester United or Burnley are still providing money for the manager, I mean, more so Manchester United because they're a bigger concern. If they're still providing money for the manager to go out there and buy the players that he wants, then why should you start getting involved and saying, we hate the Glazers, we do not? I don't want to get involved in that politics. No. There must have been people back in the day when I first started watching Manchester United, there must have been people then who probably hated the guts of Louis Edwards and didn't like Louis Edwards either. Or Bob Lord at Burnley. So why would you get it? Listen, if you was struggling at the bottom of the league and on the verge of relegation, I mean, don't forget, Man United got relegated under Tommy Docherty for one season and bounced back. Now, the people who owned the club then wasn't the Glazers. The people who owned the club then was Martin Edwards. So it wasn't the Glazers. But can you imagine what it'd been absolutely the blinking... It'd be you and cry if that happened now with the Glazers in charge. Well, it's not called for Man United being relegated. Let's get one thing straight. No club, no matter who it is in this land, are big enough to not get relegated. It doesn't happen. It's football. It can happen.
So who is to blame then for the mess that's been created at Manchester United over the last 5, 6, 7 years?
Well, I think since Fergie has decided to, I think slightly, I've got to listen. I love, Fergie to bits, and what Fergie's done for Manchester United and as a manager, is nothing short of remarkable and fantastic. I love Fergie to bits, but I think that partly, not only, but partly, I've got to blame Sir Alex in some respects, because I firmly believe that whether they like what were going on, there were obviously things that were going on, what we're not privy to behind the scenes, that they weren't happy with. Gil and Fergie weren't happy with. They must have been. For them both of them to decide, we're getting out of this. There must have been something. And such is the manner of the people that they are, they've never really brought it to the table what it is in terms of making people aware of what that issue is.
So do you actually think the infrastructure of the club was already changing before Sir Alex walked away?
Yeah, I do. 100%. 100%.
And he didn't like what he saw?
Yeah, and I think that's what we're pushing him to step down and move away. He wasn't happy. And that's why I don't think, because listen, you've got a top professional guy who's now got a big say in Manchester United. Massive say.
Yeah.
Why has he not groomed a person to be the next one to take over? Because age, in life and age, you don't stand still. Gradually you'll grow out of the position, and you need to be passing that baton down to somebody else. And ideally, if you've got the utmost respect for somebody and who as it's like if you let's take football out of this for a minute and take everyday working in business or whatever. If you've got an haulage company and you've been successful in your haulage company, there'll come a time where you've got to, through the family, it's been built up through the family. So gradually, you're now holding the fort, but there comes a time where you're not going to be able to hold the fort, and you've got to start to look who can hold the fort to carry on with the family empire once you've left, or once you're in a situation where you're not able to do it. So then straight away it's your responsibility to make sure that there's
a contingency plan.
There's a contingency plan, and you bring that in. Now I think that should have been happening at Manchester United. In respect, if you think about Fergie's retirement, it was an abrupt retirement. If you think it wasn't a steady decline into retirement. It was like we're retiring, we've gone. Yeah. It's like that. It's like, to me, as an outsider looking in, that Gill made a decision because he could see, because obviously he was the business brains behind the scenes. He could see the way that the club was going, I think. And because he could see, and he was very, very close to Sir Alex. So because he's very, very close to Sir Alex, obviously there's talking. And so they very, very quickly jumped ship, I think. This is only me. Listen, this isn't facts. This is just what I'm thinking. Yeah. Because it happened so quick. It wasn't, normally you'd think to yourself, well, how long has Sir Alex got to be at the forefront? How long, what's going to happen when he retires? Well, it doesn't matter. As long as Sir Alex has got his marbles about him, and he's fit enough and he's mobile enough, and he can do it. There's no reason why, because he had trusted staff around him, that he couldn't have carried on being the man making the decisions in there. Even today, really, in retrospect, even though he's gone through a brain tumour and stuff like that and had a major operation, I'm still, when you listen to him on interviews, I'm still thinking,
savvy.
Yeah, exactly. He's still savvy. He could still guide somebody who was like underneath him and advise them. So my point is, at that point, I think it was a quick, we're getting out, basically. And I think from that day when Gill and Ferguson left the building, not left it, and we'll come on to the comment that Roy Keane made in a short while, because I'm sure you'll throw that at me. But because that Gill and Fergie kind of left the building rapidly and very quickly, tells me that they weren't happy with things that was evolving within the hierarchy and the people who owned the club. They wasn't happy, so they did one. And from that situation, then it becomes a situation where they've really lost their leadership at the club. Yeah. There's no leader at the club. There's nobody. So they've got a free reign, basically, at the club. And it's from this point that I think that Man United's downfall has started to happen, right? Because they've brought people in, like the guy from Chelsea, that's obviously then started to try and introduce the Chelsea model. Now, we even spoke about it last week on the show. Chelsea operating, the guy who's just left Chelsea before the appointment of Leon Rossiter, right? As when he walked out, there was obviously issues that he wasn't happy with, right? And one of them were he was being dictated by five sporting directors within the club. Excuse me.
One wasn't enough.
How can any club have 5 sporting directors? I mean, it's madness. I just don't get it. But listen, has that model been started to filter into Manchester United? 100% it has, because here now we come to modern day. Now, when we keep going on and everybody goes on, we want a foreign manager. Why do we want a foreign manager? I wouldn't have a foreign manager. I think they need to. I can't even believe, and I hope he does well, because I'm English, in the World Cup. But why have we got a German taking England for a World Cup? I don't get it. It's just absolutely putting 2 fingers up like that to all the coaches that spent millions. He's got the pro license and not giving him a chance to blink in to do something within the England setup.
Absolutely.
So I don't get it. It's bonkers to me. This is what makes football good, is that, It's not England now. When Sir Alf Ramsey were running England, and even people before that, Terry Venables, it were about England. We were Britain and going into foreign territory against the foreigners, right? Competing. Now, it's not. It's a foreigner that's running England. And if we win the World Cup, you know what all the bragging rights will be? Well, England did World Cup. It took a German to freaking guide them to win the World Cup. That's what you're going to get.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's for me, it's just madness. It's just not right. But my point being, so now we've got to a situation at Man United. Let's have it right. We've had foreign coaches at Man United, and they've not succeeded. We've had Louis van Gaal, who were an international manager. We've had Jose Mourinho, who was a successful blinking manager in his own right. We've had blinking Ralph Rangnick. We've had Ten Hag. We've had people like that, right? Yeah. Then there's no guarantee on this earth that you appoint somebody like if he once he's finished his contract with England, there's no guarantee on this earth if they appointed him as the manager of Manchester United that he's going to be successful.
It is, though, Brent. You mentioned them managers there, and I come back to, I remember the interview when Ralph was brought into the club. And he put a massive spotlight on the football club before he went. And he spelt it out what the problems were at Manchester United. It wasn't managers. It was the inner structure of the football club that was wrong.
Exactly. This is where we're talking now. Exactly. And that's exactly right. And that's where it's wrong. And that's where we're at now, even right up to today. No disrespect. I wouldn't listen. The only time I ever heard a Jason Wilcock's name was when he was starring or playing. I wouldn't say starring as much. Blackburn Rovers. That's it. Where he's gone since and what he's done since is immaterial. But he's not really your household name person. And he's not got, certainly, the fact that he was listen, I'm not decrying anything that happened at Blackburn Rovers at the time under Sir Kenny Dalglish. It was nothing short of remarkable what Sir Kenny Dalglish did for Blackburn Rovers. But let's not beat about the bush here, which is always the case throughout football. Money talks. The only reason Blackburn Rovers were in the situation that Blackburn Rovers were in that because of Jack Walker. And everybody knows that, and once Jack Walker happened to Jack Walker, the Blackburn have just been on free fall, and it's been a nightmare for the club. But obviously, for that period that Jack Walker were putting that blinking all that money in, and brought in the likes of Kenny Dalglish, who then built and then brought in a top coach. So this is another one. Right, let's look at that one. So he's brought in Kenny Dalglish, right? Who was the manager. The main coach was Ray Harford.
Correct.
So you've got a manager and a coach. They're two separate jobs.
Yeah.
I say it all the time. They're not the same job. So Blackburn Rovers' success... So Blackburn Rovers' success has come down. No, I'm not saying it's just come down to blinking, Ray Harford. It's come down to a teamwork, of the backroom staff, but it's been headed and implemented by Kenny Dalglish, who's brought that staff in, who's then answerable to Jack Walker or Jack Walker's trusted lieutenants, who's ahead of him. And that's the DNA, and that's what should be happening now at Manchester United. Exactly that. I mean,
it's like most clubs, though, Brent. It's like most clubs. There just seems to be, we've gone from this European model. Too many cooks spoiling broth. Football's a simple game, and as you just said there were two men in charge, Kenny Dalglish and Ray Harford, the manager and the coach. And they made the decisions.
100%. That's how it should be. I mean, last week, go back to last week's show in our term at Bacup. Now, listen, I'm privileged here. I've got some, good. My backroom staff, who I've recruited in, are good people. I think are very, very good in their own right. But we've got two people we've got somebody that's never been a first line manager, and I don't expect him to be a front line manager because that's not his job. He's a coach. Let's get it right. He is a coach, and his drills and his way he does things is very, very good, and he can talk to players, and he he's good and methodical in what he does. We've got two younger people in the setup who also are very, very good in their own right. Now, one of them is obviously a lecturer at a university, but but in all respect, in all due respect, but it doesn't matter. He's not really, been a frontline manager and had to take a team and had to pick a team and had to be under the pressure of like players not getting in and having to deal with things like that. It doesn't happen. But in a coaching sense, he's very, very good and methodical and really good. And again, he's a good talker and he can explain. But collectively, if you think about it, they might have slightly different ideas individually. So it might be that they might have different ideas of what should happen or an opinion of what should happen. So if they're watching Man United and Brighton today and they're all in separate buildings, so Nigel's watching it, let's say, and you were to ring Nigel up and say to Nigel, how do you think this game's going? And Nigel has an opinion, and then he rings, and then we ring, say, Alan up, who's not even anywhere near Nigel, and ask Alan for his opinion. His opinion of watching the game might be slightly different to what Nigel's saying, because it's his opinion, right? That's the way. It doesn't mean to say that what Nigel's saying's wrong or what Alan's saying's right or vice versa. It's just opinions of how they're seeing the game as it unfolds. Now, if you turn around and say, if we're all stood in a dugout and that situation arises, if you're not careful, you get blinking. You stood in a dugout where you've got to make split-second decisions. You've got to read situations. You've got to see that things are unfolding that shouldn't unfold, and you need to stamp it on it quickly because it only takes a second for a team to score a goal, right? So really, you can't start asking questions and saying, would you do this? Would you do that? You need to be on it. You need to make it. And whether they like it or don't like it, it's tough shit.
Yeah.
Because you've got to make that decision.
It always falls at the feet of the manager.
Yeah, because you can't wait. Because I've known, and I'll say it many a time, whoever I'm working with, bloody hell, we can't have a board meeting here, and you need to make the decision. What we're talking about, decisions has to be made. I'm telling you, he needs to. Oh, I wouldn't be taking him off. Well, why not? He has to come off. We have to sacrifice him to go this way and do that. We need to get a foothold back in this game. And then things have to be done, and they usually have to be done where there's a strong manager who would say that and do it. So my point is, everybody, it doesn't mean to say that they're any better or any worse than the next person they're working with. What it means is that the people see things in a slightly different light, and it's even the same with spectators. How many times, the other week, Simon Holding, who doesn't even watch us every game, right? Because now he's out in Spain, he won't be watching us, he hasn't got a clue. He'll listen to this show or he'll listen to your comms, but he hasn't got a clue what's going on. But when he comes back, he'll try and have an opinion. But I'm the type of manager and says, shut the fuck up, you fucking idiot, you haven't been here.
Yeah.
You get me? Whereas you get somebody else who'll be a nodding dog. Yeah, you're right, Simon. You know what I mean?
But if we go back to United and you talk about strong leadership, we've just rattled off them managers. Van Gaal, Mourinho, Ten Hag, all quality managers, Brent. Now, they've signed up. They've signed the contract. We heard Amorim just before his parting shot. I'm a manager, not a coach. Well, we were all under the illusion that his title was head coach. So what are we getting wrong here? What's been said in private than for him to have the outburst?
Well, this is why I always say you should have your job description, and your job description should be down in your contract, and it should be in writing, so you know exactly what you are and what your role and responsibility is. We're getting conflicted stories here. You know, it sounds like, and if you listen to his interview and his parting of his ways, listen, his interview sounds like that he thinks he's been in here as he's been brought in at Manchester United as the manager. He's been given or with the manager's responsibilities, let's say that. And when he's come in, he isn't having the manager's responsibilities. He's just basically got the coach's responsibilities, and he's answerable. In his words, he's answerable to Jason Wilcox. So, but in his head, he's not really answerable to Jason Wilcox because, you know, I'm supposed to be here making the decisions. But this, which takes me back to the uncertainty of Manchester United, because one thing we're missing here, and I don't know why it's happened, and the people who's close to Manchester United may know why it's happened, but it sounds to me probably the person that's probably set the wheels in motion initially to bring Ruben Amorim into Manchester United with Dan Ashworth. That's who it sounds like to me. What's happened is Dan Ashworth.
And he lasted 2 minutes.
But this is what I'm saying. But then, who, when they brought in, or when he bought all the shares or a percentage of the shares, Ratcliffe, right, Jim Ratcliffe, when he bought the shares and everything and came in, all of a sudden, Dan Ashworth's gone. Now, there's something obviously gone on behind the scenes that nobody's privy to. There's been a blinking bust up somewhere. You can smell it. There's a bust up somewhere behind the scenes. He all of a sudden they've paid money out for him. So there's Manchester United have paid money to Newcastle. He's had to go on gardening leave before he's coming into Manchester United. He comes into Manchester United. He's only in Manchester United a matter of weeks, if that, and then he's been ousted out of Manchester United. Why is that? Something's not right there. And nobody's coming out and saying what's not right there. No. It's like cloak and dagger. So we don't know. Now, to me, as people got like they brought, I don't know anything about this Brada they brought in. He were at Manchester City. Why are we getting, and no disrespect to Manchester City, but why are we bringing in freaking people from Man City? I don't get that either. It's Man United, Man City. Man United were always the leaders, not Man City, but Man City are the leaders and have been for a long time. And their setup, obviously, it's not right anyway, because how many times have they been investigated? It's only money talks why they're shitting themselves, why they haven't been,
not been relegated. Yeah.
Well, they haven't been relegated because they're shitting themselves, because it's political. Right, but why are we getting Manchester City blinking off cuts into Manchester United? You know, would Man City be taking Man United? You know, if something happens to Jason Wilcox, will they take him back? I mean, in my eyes, they can friggin' have him.
Well, yeah. And I think in a lot of people's eyes, a lot of supporters, I think they'd like to see the back of him.
You get people that, if you're not careful, and it happens at every level of football, if you're not careful, you get people who come in that have a role, right, but they then go above the station. And unless you keep a tight rein on them and organise them and pull them in, they're a free bird.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's happening at Manchester United. I think Jason Wilcox is in there and he's got a free hand. Who's managing him?
I think he's had too much to say, and he's had too much to say to Amorim.
I think so.
Hold on, I'm in charge here. I'm the manager.
Right. I agree. That's exactly what's happened. And when you think about it, and the more you look into it, and the more you look why he's, I think that Amorim's got to a situation when you're in a job, whatever job you're in, and you're happy in your job, but then all of a sudden you're in there and you think, I need to get out of here.
Yeah, I can't change this because you don't want to change it.
I'm in a bad place here because all I'm going to do is I'm going to end up being a nodding dog when I'm not a nodding dog. And what's going to happen is when things go wrong, which things will go wrong, right? The buck will stop with me.
Yeah. I'm the fall guy.
And it's not me making them decisions. It's him making the decisions, but he's making it look like it's me making the decisions. And it's me that'll be the fall guy, and in our reputation. So, balls to that.
And I think that's what he did. He had that opportunity. He knew he was going to be sacked, and he used that interview, that post-match interview at Leeds United, as his parting shot to let everybody know what was going on at the club, because he knew he was going to get sacked.
Well, I think there were a few things on that parting interview, because I think on the Friday, which happened to come after the bad performance against Wolves, and this is why he throws the Gary Neville situation in, right? Obviously, listen, on the eye, it was dire to watch against Wolves. Yeah. Now, listen, it's not Ruben Amorim. Again, we come back to this situation. He's got what he's got. Who's recruited them players? Because at the end of the day, some of them might be Ruben's players, but not majority aren't. Majority are not Ruben's players. And who's brought them in? The recruitment. So them players, irrespective, and I don't care, they're talking now of bringing a manager in or a coach in, a head coach in, to steady the ship until the end of the season. Whoever comes in there and takes that bunch of freaking shite on, right, will not succeed, because the shite, you can't change what you're working with. You can't change it. You're working with them, no matter, and it proves it. The fact that Fletcher has gone to Burnley, and this is no disrespect to Burnley, he's changed the shape. He's gone to a more conventional, he's done a 4-2-3-1 formation. He's changed the shape, but the same absolute shite was dished up. Now, no disrespect to Burnley, they were there for the taking. But it was still the first half was blinking. I was having a bit of banter with some of my employees, and I said, blinking heck, after what, it's freezing cold out there, and watching that blinking show in the first 45 minutes, I'd leave the ground, I'd walk across road, I'd go in Park View where it's warm, I'd blinking throw a few freaking beer down my neck, at least where I'm having a bit of entertainment because there's beer there. I'll have some beer and I can watch it on Sky, because it was that bad. It was that bad, right?
And as you said, they play in Burnley. They're my team, but if you can't beat Burnley, you've got a problem, haven't you?
And Burnley could have won that in the end. I mean, Burnley could have won it, but without getting back to what we're saying is there's a shape being changed. The same players are playing, majority of them, right? It's the same players, but it's the same lethargic, under par performance is happening. So that tells me it doesn't matter who you're going to bring in at this stage, unless you're going to spend some money this is another thing that he's been let down with, in the January transfer window, because it sounded like that Wilcox has been basically turned round. And you know what they're like at these football clubs. Listen, if they've got it in their head that they're going to set Ruben Amorim in the summer, not now. I don't think he were going to get sacked now. I think he'd have got sacked at end of season if he were going to get sacked, especially if they didn't qualify for Europe. So I think in probably Wilcox and Brado's head, we don't want to be spending money on what he wants, because he might not be here come blinking when we start the season next season, because we're going to get rid of him. So there's them telling him, we're not going to give you any money
he's seen the writing on the wall. He's not stupid, is Amorim.
No,
so he's presented his wish list, way months, probably like September, October, in advance for the January transfer window. He's presented this list of players he wants, and he's been knocked back straight away.
Yeah, I think that's what will have happened. Yeah, he's been knocked back. They've had a meeting, and obviously at that meeting, you know what it can be like at any meeting. You're gonna put your case forward. the club are going to put their case back, and there you go. And the next thing, he's not getting what he's getting. And then obviously Wilcox has obviously said, listen, going forward, can you not change your shape? What about going to a more conventional? Because he's obviously listened to freaking Gary Neville. But this is another bone of contention with me, right? About co-commentating. Listen, and on purpose, I listened to, excuse me, on purpose, I listened to the TNT commentating team that commentated for the game Wrexham versus Nottingham Forest. And I did it on purpose. Usually I switch off to these co-commentators because they can wind me up. You get me? But I on purpose listened to it. And I've got to say, what a breath of fresh air the co-commentator, who happened to be Ali McCoist. Now, Ali McCoist, to me, is what a co-commentator is about. He got excited in the game. Oh, what good defending. That's fantastic defending. Yeah. Fantastic how he laid his body on the line there and defended that. And then you get up at the other end. Oh, what a fantastic move that word. And you just watch this move here. Watch this move when he got it. Pick the ball up here. And he's, exactly. Not both sides. He's not making an opinion on, I don't think that manager should pick him. He shouldn't be him. Why are they playing this shape? It should be this shape. It should be that shape. Fucking Gary Neville stood on there doing that. Well, it's his job to do that. Let's get one thing straight here, right? And this is probably not going to do me any good if it gets back to him, right? What I'm going to say now. But I don't give a flying fuck, right? I don't give a flying fuck. I'll tell you straight as it is, right? Because that's how I am. Especially when somebody fucking winds me up. And he started to wind me up, right? Listen, I've known Gary a long time. I've known Phil a long time. But more so, I've known the late father, right? Because I was with him at Borough. Neville, right? Why is he? He's a failed manager, right? Yeah. He's failed. He's gone in. And he would never, in normal circumstances, would he have got that Valencia job if he didn't know the blinking owner, right, of the club. Right? He would not have freaking got that Valencia job, but he's gone in there and he could not do it. Now, you tell me how Sky can employ somebody as a co-commentator that is going to stand up there and try to blinking tell Ruben Amorim or tell Fletcher today or tell who, well, he won't because it's TNT, or tell any manager what they should be doing and how they should be playing the game. When he's not privy to, he's not mixing with them players on a daily basis, he doesn't know the characters, and he's not there to do that. He's there to commentate what he sees in front of him, not make opinions about the team and what should be happening. And he makes opinions about the team and what should be happening. Ali McCoist, in that game on Friday night, didn't make one, didn't start to belittle.
It's all about the football. It's all about
the football. He never once condemned Sean Dyche for not picking his best team from the beginning. He never mentioned that. Right? He never mentioned it. We can all have opinions. I have opinion about that. To me, you pick your best team.
But isn't this someone who actually knows what he's doing then? Who knows what his job entails? Or where has Gary been given too much rope? Is he going way above his station?
I think so. And I think what he does, he freaking uses these platforms to get his blinking stupid messages across.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that can't be happening. That shouldn't be happening. Listen, let's have it right. The lad has been an excellent footballer but he's always reminded me, and I'm not going to I always had an opinion when I were around, like I said, when I was growing up and around Man United and thinking, I always thought that out of the two of them, I'm not talking football now. I'm talking about as a person and as people, right? As well as footballers, right? I always felt that Phil Neville were the best lad of the two of them. 100%.
Seems the quietest one.
Well, He might be quiet, but even when you talk to him and things that he'd do and go out of his way to do and do, I always felt that Phil were the best of the two. Listen, I'm not here to compare anyway, but all I'm saying is that I don't think it's healthy what Gary's doing, and I certainly don't. I certainly can't see. Listen, we can all fail at football because it's a ruthless. You can't guarantee results. I mean, I've listened to an interview. Would you believe this morning? Earlier on, where Rossiner talks about you can't guarantee to win football matches. You just can't. In fact, I thought it was me talking, and he said, "But what I know, I'll give it. I know I'm good at my job, and I'll give it my best shot, and I'm sure I'll succeed." Now, that's a breath of fresh air to me because he understands, and people should understand that. You can't guarantee whatever level you're playing in. You cannot guarantee that you're going to win football matches. You only have to look at that result of Wrexham's on Saturday in the FA Cup, right? You only have to look at blinking. The bigger one is a more prominent one is Macclesfield's achievement against Crystal Palace. You only have to look at that, to see that you can't guarantee winning games of football. You only have to look at, and I'll bring Wrexham into it again, 2 weeks ago when they're playing a strong Sheffield United team and they were winning the game, they were losing the game 3-1, and they end up coming back to 5-3. This is top. This is top drawer foot. This is top at the top end football. This, so you can't. All these idiots all these idiots that think the football. And if one thing that stood out for me, I know we're digressing slightly here, and we need to get back onto the Man United situation. But one thing that stood out as stonewall certainty to me, watching the Wrexham game on Friday night, when Wrexham seemed so comfortable, and then all of a sudden, Sean Jice and Alec McCoy actually said it in commentary. I don't really think Sean wanted to use these players because they've got a big game coming up against Arsenal, which is, But when he brought on that, Hudson. Is he called Hudson? Hudson. What's he called? O'Dwyer. When he brought him on, you could see the golfing class. Yeah. The golfing stood out a mile. And you thought, bloody hell, you need to keep him away from edge at Lincoln 18-yard box. He's going to do some serious damage. Yeah. Right? And he did. So that's what I'm trying to say. So when you look at Burnley, I'm throwing this one in. So when you look at Burnley and all these clowns that go over there on Turf Moor that are freaking after blinking Scott out, and he's got them up there and he's operating in a blinking Premier League with players of that quality and class, and he's not got the same quality of class as player of that, it tells you why Burnley are struggling. Yeah. It's all about the class and the quality. Which will win you a game of football. And that's what turned the Wrexham game on its head. If he'd have gone out with his proper team against Wrexham, in all due respect, no disrespect to Wrexham, they should have beat him. Yeah, exactly. But he didn't. They made the changes, for whatever reasons they do. So my point being, that's football. Football is football. And, and I hear it all the time. And I think it was... one of the top managers said this weekend, he said, we have got talented players, right? Quality talented players. In fact, I think it was Sean Dyche. Quality talented players, but he said, if they don't turn up in terms of the work rate, because this lot will go out and will work their socks off. And if they do not match them for work rate, right, then we could have a problem because that talent alone will not see us through.
No. And he was spot on, wasn't he?
Spot on. So anyway, going back to the Man United situation.
Well, back to the United situation, Brent. We've spoke about Amorim, spoke about Wilcox and what's going on behind the scenes. But let's look at the possibilities going forward. Let's look at the ones who, might throw the cap into the ring. There's the names coming out already. Is Ollie a possibility until the end of the season, or is he a possibility beyond that? Could he make a return?
I honestly think they've got to look at the person they've got to look at, somebody, and that somebody's got to be, that somebody, what I'm talking about, has got to be Ratcliffe, in my opinion. He's got to get a grip, and I think he's got to sort out that Jason Wilcox and Brada. Brada, for me, should be there, and they're only running the business.
Yeah.
And what I call the business, not football business, running the club from a financial point of view on all aspects of everything apart from what goes on the football field. So he should be there to talk about and organise the commercial side of to make sure that is making money and we're generating money and they're investing the money right. He should not be involved in football matters. That is not what he's there for, in my opinion. He should be, and David Gill, if we go back to David Gill, he was not at Manchester United when he was running the show for Football Matters. Football Matters, when David Gill was running the show, was there. Right, the Football Matters was down to Sir Alex, not David Gill. Right,
all it was a case of Fergie going to Gill and saying, "Can we afford X, Y, and Z player?" And he'd either say yes or no.
So that's where Brada comes in, right? That's it. What is the position now of booking Jason Wilcox? Do we need him?
Well,
Do we need Jason Wilcox? I'd say no, we don't need him.
You ever did?
We don't need him. Is that a job for the boys? Has he got a job for the boys here? What's he come in for? Send him back to Man City. We don't want him. Send him back up road, Colliers. Get him back up there. He can go there, right? We don't want him. We don't need to be there, right? That's the first thing that needs to happen, right? Ruthless as it is, see you later, right? Now then, we might get somewhere because now what they should be doing is appointing a manager who can manage, who knows the game, who can manage and make decisions. Liverpool under Klopp had this situation.
Yeah.
Klopp was a manager, stroke coach. He was a manager. He was the boss. He was the boss. That is who they need to bring in. Now, at this point, I've got to say, at this point, as well as Kieran McKenna's doing for Ipswich, and Jose Mourinho recommended him, I personally, and I might stand to be corrected here, or anybody, do not think he is a manager. He is a coach all day long. And from what I'm getting told, and people I'm in contact with are telling me when he was at Manchester United, he used to do all the coaching. And even when he was working with Ole, he did all the coaching. So he's a coach. He's not a manager. This is the problem. They need to appoint a manager.
He needs a strong person inside there.
Exactly. Michael Carrick, done brilliant for Middlesbrough, but I listened to his interviews, done brilliant for Middlesbrough, listened to his interviews, listened to him, he's Manchester United DA. Again, he's a coach. They'll just go down they'll go down this road of appointing because he's done a good job at Middlesbrough, but he's lost his job at Middlesbrough. And why has he lost his job at Middlesbrough? I come back to this situation why I got appointed at Doncaster Rovers. By rights, I should never have been in at Doncaster Rovers, right? I was brought in at Doncaster Rovers because the manager, who was a coach, was absolutely top drawer coach, was Curry Dixon. And he was fantastic coach, but he had no fire in his belly or anything. So the players were going out flat as fuck. Exactly. That's the difference. So Michael Carrick, should he be the manager of Manchester United? No, he shouldn't. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, should he be the manager of Manchester United? No, because I think strong players will walk all over him and he'll be a nodding dog. That's not going to get you. Your strong players need strong managers. They need a strong manager to manage them. Because I'll tell you now, it's a ruthless place, it's changing rooms. Oh, yeah. And if there's any flaw and any player smells a flaw in a coach or a manager, they're ruthless. Believe me, ruthless.
Yeah.
Right, so I don't think he is right. So I don't agree with that. Darren Fletcher, I don't see. He come over well the other night. He set his team up well. There's no surprise that he's with the under-18s, because you know why he's with the under-18s? Because in any football club, an under-18 coach is probably one of the most important coaches going. One of the most important, because this is the transition from kids football, from apprentices, right, to come in to get him into adult football.
The development and the nurturing.
Correct. So that is a massive position, right? And Darren Fletcher, no disrespect, should, because he's made for it. And Michael Carrick's made for that as well. They're made for it. But Darren Fletcher, because he's already working in that environment, right? But is Darren Fletcher the answer? Right, at minute, just to steady the ship. Yeah, fair enough. I get it, but he's not the answer. Let him go back to one of the most important roles in the club, which is the development of under-18 players, right? That are coming from the transition, are coming out of academies into the pro game, right? And hopefully having a top career as a professional. It's totally different, you know. Back in the day, and I'm sure they don't even do it now. They don't even do team shape until they get into being a first year pro. They don't go into it. It's all about your blinking development in your touch and receiving the ball and opening your body and then passing a ball. Right, so Darren Fletcher. So no, I don't agree with I do not agree with any of them. Right, I agree that they could play a part in Manchester United, but certainly not as the manager of Manchester United. And if they're going to go down the road of an head coach, where one of them is the head coach, and they're going to be answerable to a sporting director in a wet wipe like Jason Wilcox, well, we're fucked.
It's going to fail again.
We're fucked.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I'm swearing. Sunday morning, sorry. But I'm getting carried away, because I'm telling you, we won't be right. It'll fail.
So really, just for me, and I think a lot of people, and you, because we've spoken, it comes down to one person that they've got to make an approach to if they want to change it and stop this carousel of failure that they've had for years.
They've got to get rid of that sporting director situation, right? They need to rid it. They need an experience.
Need it.
They need. There's an experienced manager. People are throwing. Gary Neville's thrown in Ancelotti, but Ancelotti, you might as well, if you're going to bring Ancelotti in, I'm sorry, but you might as well bring Alex Ferguson back.
Yeah.
I'm just being straight. You might as well bring Sir Alex Ferguson back, because Ancelotti is a top manager. Top manager. Not wrong. But how long has he got at the highest level? So that's why I'm saying you might as well bring Sir Alex back.
If you need to be you want to be planning for at least the next 10 years.
Yeah. Personally, I don't think that were a bad shout of Roy Keane's when he said Eddie out.
Yeah, young, up and coming.
His backroom staff, then they play the Man United way. They play exciting, attacking football. I know they leave themselves wide open a bit at the back at times, but nevertheless, the fans that sort of football at United will go down a treat. They'd love it. I don't think it's a bad shout, that Eddie Howe. But it needs somebody. I know I'm probably going to get pelters thrown at me what I'm going to say next, because I think he could manage, and I think he could be really, really respected, although he does come across as a bit of a wet wipe, but he's not a wet wipe. I'm telling you, he's very much respected. And I know I'll get pelters when I say his name, but it is what it is. It's opinions. But I think Gareth Southgate would fill the void at Man United massively. Massively. I just think he's so much respected in the game. I just think that he knows the game inside out. He's managed at the highest level. Players, foreign players, English players, British players, all respect him. So when you're recruiting, they want to come and play for him.
But is he a manager, Brent, who is going to continue with this infrastructure in place, this sporting director? He's of that ilk, isn't he?
He is of that ilk. Kind of. You could bring. Listen, I don't think. I mean. Well, there's another little subject here. What I'd like to talk about and touch on. I mean, I'd like to see the person who I would like to see, but I don't think it'll happen, and I wish it would.
Well, same here.
Roy Keane. Roy Keane, as a manager, is what that club needs. But he's not going to be answerable to wet lights like like Jason Wilcox. He ain't fucking going to happen.
But by bringing Keane in, it would break this stupid mould that they've got in place.
100%. 100%.
That mould, that blueprint since Sir Alex left has failed. And this man would rip that paper in front of someone like Wilcox.
100%. But the thing is, what's happening at Man United now at the minute, they're stubborn. And the thing is as well, who else is stubborn? Roy Keane is stubborn. But Roy Keane, I can tell everything about Roy Keane, right? And deep down, and you'll only find this out if you're really close to him and you can get inside his head. But I know deep down, he's bitter and upset.
Yeah.
Bitter and upset. And the reason why I'm saying bitter is because I think every time the Man United jobs come up and things like that, he's not really been in the frame. Like somebody said to him on Sky the other day when he was doing an interview, the question was put to him and he wouldn't answer it properly because he said, they won't ring. He said, it's pointless going there because they won't ring me. They won't ring me. And that to me is a sign of somebody that's kind of hurting.
Yeah.
Kind of hurting. Now, and this is why I say, and he came out with that, and I think the press have played on it when he said that Gill and Ferguson are around the place like a bad smell, right? Now, I don't think he meant that, but listen, he's got a grudge. Fergie's got a grudge. Fergie has every reason as a manager at the time to deal with his captain however he saw fit to deal with his captain. Again, I come back to it, even though it's not the same level, but it's similar to Manchester United. Here at Bacup, you've just gone through the history, and we've now gone through that book, and we talked about in the early parts of the book where I had a captain here at Bacup Borough, and I'm not being funny. He's a great lad, and to this day, he comes and talks to me. He comes on Bacup Borough. He'll come and talk to me. I go down. We've even gone to his gym in the past. He's opened his doors for us to use the gym. He's even taken us for sessions to use his gym. He's a great lad, right? Let me get you right, and I have the utmost respect for him, and I know for a fact he's got the utmost respect for me. But in his early days, when I had him as a player at Bacup Borough, I clashed with him because I'm a manager, and if I feel, even though I made him the captain and he was a very, very good player, if he oversteps the mark within his role of responsibility within the club, right, and I think that he's overstepped the mark, I have to act. I can't let sentiment overtake. I act, and I'm ruthless, me. Yeah. You know what I mean? At the minute, all these lads who play under me now at the minute, they're not seeing the real. When you listen to like the likes of Daniel Cox, and you listen to like Adrian Bellamy, and you listen to people like David Luca, and people of the from back in the day, and Stuart Thompson.
I know, Brent. We've spent them hours together, and we're going through this putting this book together, and it's quite clear to see, mate, that no disrespect, in the last 15, 20 years, you've mellowed.
Yeah, exactly.
These players today, you'd have them up against bloody shower wall, wouldn't you? Putting a fist through them.
You were doing an interview with me the other day, and Deborah in the same vicinity, and she overheard something, and she stopped you straight away, and she said, Brent had him pinned up outside at blinking changing room wall.
Yeah. And I think that person you were talking about, was it Rodri Giggs? Ryan Giggs' brother?
Yeah, it were, yeah. So, listen, but what I'm trying to get at is, coming back to the Roy King-Fergie situation, and going back to this, what I'm trying to talk about now with my captain, I had to do something that because he overstepped the mark. Now, once I made the decision to do what I did, it wasn't like I was doing it to a person that was from Manchester that didn't have a care in the world about Bacup Borough. And this is a Bacup lad, born and bred.
Yeah.
Born and bred. So once it went in the press what I'd done, and Blinking absolutely showed me true colours of managing him, and I weren't kicking one person, I was kicking Arthur Bacup, because Arthur Bacup were in his corner.
But you needed to do it because otherwise you were the next victim. You were being undermined.
Yeah, exactly. So I had to do it. Now I did it, and the rest is history. I did it. He was taking advice at the time off his father-in-law, and his father-in-law kept saying, "You can't do that to you." They got a solicitor on my case. I told the solicitor he rang me up, did the solicitor, and I said, "You know what I do with solicitors' letters? I use them for freaking toilet paper. See you later." Right?
But this is leadership.
But yeah, exactly. So what I'm saying is, so my point is, Fergie and Keane have clashed because Fergie's done something that he wasn't happy with Keane. And Keane has been a stubborn, strong person that he's carried this feud on all the time. Now, this is where I think that, again, the leadership at Manchester United, whether it be a senior figure, a senior player, right, or whether it be somebody at the club, I think should get them both together, right, bang their heads together, like you would do if two players fight in the blinking training ground, which I've seen loads of times, right? You need to get them in a separate room and when it calms down, and have a serious man-to-man talk, and then bang their heads together and let them stand up and shake hands and be loved. I can tell you incidents that back in the day that I've seen and brought fights up, and it's ended up where two players, I mean, I can tell you, Lee Anderson versus Carl Stanley, and they were like proper real freaking fisticuffs in a fight, not blinking pussy, like freaking real freaking beating each other. I've had to stop the session, got them away, calmed them down, eventually got them in a room, went after training, talked to them, and it's ended up for next 2 years after that, they were sharing cars and coming to work, coming together. It happens. So my point being,
they managed to sort the differences out.
Correct. And I think that what should be happening now, and Fergie, somebody needs to get a grip and get Fergie and get, for the benefit of Man United and the benefit of the blinking football, sort your differences out, sort it out, get them together, bang their heads together like two little schoolboys, sort your differences out, let's move on. Get Roy Keane in the building, because I think there is a position for Roy Keane. Get Roy Keane in the building, and then Roy Keane can probably appoint a Kieran McKenna to work with him as a coach.
Yeah. And get rid of the infrastructure that doesn't need to be there.
Correct.
That's which is taking pound notes up and costing the fans even more money.
Correct. So I think, for me, he loves Man United. It's pretty obvious. He loves Man United. He obviously doesn't love Fergie, which is, we can accept. I can accept that. He'll drop things in. He's a bit but I think that needs to be sorted, Even to the point, if Gary Neville, who's supposed to come across, but he's a wet wipe, let's have it right. You can tell Gary Neville's a freaking wet wipe. He was always a freaking wet wipe, right? But he should be the one that would stand up to, I mean, you seen him the other night when blinking, what's he called? Sturridge frigging turned on him in studio. You know, he's a wet wipe. But you'd think that somebody like Gary Neville would get a grip of Roy Keane and say, come on, and try to sort it and go and book a meal, you know, and make sure Alex Ferguson, so they sit round the freaking table and freaking thrash it out. He could be the man to do that because it needs that. Because I'll tell you now, Man United need Roy Keane in that building. 100% need him. 100%. And then let him come in. He's got a lot to prove, right? And then get your better coaches. Like if you want Kieran McKenna, he can coach under Roy. If you want your Michael Carrick, he can coach under Roy. If you want your Ollie Solskjaer, he can coach under Roy. Darren Fletcher, well, I'll keep him in his job that he was doing, right? And you don't need all these blinking foreign managers that come in that's untried because they're having one season under him. I mean, I can't believe they'd even point that somebody like Rubin, right? Even though I think he's been done by and they've shit on him, right? I mean, he's only just finished playing 8 years ago.
Yeah. And when you're managing, apart from Sporting, Brent, we spoke about it. He's been at Braga B team. He'd hardly done anything. How come this guy's made like 10 steps in one jump?
Well, this is again is that you know, it's like how they recruit players today. How do they recruit players? They've never known anything. This is why people are getting blinking idiotic players that aren't good, because it's all on stats. Never used to be on stats. It's all on stats now.
But how can you measure a player's character and persona based on stats?
You can't.
You want to see what he's like on a cold night at Stoke.
Correct. Exactly. There's a lot of things that's wrong in football at the minute. A lot of things, and I think they need to get back to the tried and trusted. And you know, the tried and trusted is how it used to be. And you know, your manager's your manager, and he'll dictate on his. You know, he'd work with his chief scout. You know, there's a process with scouting. You know, and they won't get your chief scout involved straight away. Your chief scout comes in later. And then later, when the chief scout's got all the reports finalised and everything, what then would happen is the manager would then go to watch the player in question. So if the chief scout went to the manager and said, "Look, we've been monitoring this lad for a long time. You know, the coaches. I've even been and watched games and watched him play. I've done my due diligence. I know his character." The manager then would go and attend games with the chief scout, and the manager gives it seal of approval. He's just what I want in that midfield.
Exactly. And it's as simple as that. We've complicated the game.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think so.
It's as simple as that. The chief scout, he puts the recommendations forward. He then goes to watch a couple of games with the manager, because it's the manager who's going to be picking him.
Yeah. And
if he fits that role, job done. Let's put an offer in.
100%. That's how it should be.
But anyway, last question. Do you think they'll bite the bullet? Do you think they'll go and bring Roy into the club? I'd love to see it.
Well,
and I think everyone else would who is a United fan.
I think the only way they're going to do that is strong leadership, and it can only be at the minute where it's set up. Is that from Jim Radcliffe? It can only be from him. It can only be from him. But he would be your ideal manager in my eyes, because he's a strong character. So when you get your strong player in, you know, who is a strong player, who then becomes, and this is another thing you see, what you get in a changing room, and it happens at every level, you'll get a strong character in there that maybe is not the best player.
Yeah.
But because he's such a strong character, you know, other lads try and back his corner and rally round. And if you're a weak manager or a weak person in that changing room, they're ruling the roost over you. You can't have that. You can't have that. Can't happen. You've got to be a strong character. And you can't, if a player turns on you, which easily can happen, you've got to be freaking onto them, and you freaking sort it out. Freaking, you can't go be then all of a sudden become a shrinking violet.
But then also, if Roy does get in, and he brings the likes of Ollie, and he's got Darren there, and he's got Nicky Butt or whoever, or Carrick behind him. If them kind of things start to happen, you've then got the backing. This is the United way, mate. This is how we do things here. And if you don't like it, fucking road's there.
That's exactly. That's how it needs to happen. It's just wrong at the minute.
Overpowering.
It's just wrong at the minute. The setup's wrong. So we've gone on this show, Steve, right from the beginning. We've broke everything back. We've brought it right the way up to present day. And the person that needs that shouldn't be in there, no disrespect to him, right? Don't even know why he's there, but he's there. Is that Jason Wilcox? He shouldn't be there. There's no room for him. There's no need for him to be there. Roy Keane should be answerable to the person that's doing the everyday running of Man United that Jim Radcliffe has put in place to run the show at Man United. And if that person is Barada, then he's answerable to Barada. But Roy Keane, but one man, that's it, right? One man. And Roy Keane would be the person that has to bring in and implement his own staff. And if he's got anything, because he's in contact with these people, everything else, his staff would be, he knows who's good at the job. Obviously, Kieran McKenna was recommended by Jose Mourinho. He's since come on and done leaps and bounds on his own, but I still don't make him out to be a manager. I think he's a coach all day long, so he could appoint him as his first team coach. Michael Carrick he could appoint as his first team coach, not a problem. They could have the recruitment. He could have a look at he should do like Fergie did when Fergie came into United. Had a look at everything and strip it all back and reinvent the wheel back to how it should be. And that's what it needs at Man United. Because at the minute, Man United will go nowhere while they're doing what they're doing. And whoever they bring in is on an hiding to nothing. And if they went for, let's say they went for Eddie Howe. Eddie Howe, I am sure, would want to be the person that makes the decisions, right? And he's not going to be making the decisions because he's going to have Jason Wilcox, who thinks he can make the decisions, and he will be. So there'll be a clash of there behind the scenes because there'll be things that he won't agree with Jason Wilcox. So for me, he needs to go. Jason Wilcox. The next one is, if you went for the best in class, even if you say you got Jurgen Klopp in, which I would imagine would never happen, but let's say it did happen, and you got Jurgen Klopp in, if he's got a deal with somebody like Jason Wilcox, it ain't happening. Let's be honest, it ain't happening. And they probably wouldn't come under them circumstances.
No.
So Man United...
Like Jurgen Klopp and good managers like that, you'll find them. They're interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them. Yeah.
Man United are going to do nothing. I fear for them. I fear this situation at the minute. I fear for it because, they've obviously, listen, let's have it right. Man United, no matter how much you look at balance sheets or everything, if they want players, they've got the money to get players.
Yeah.
This is why I don't agree with all this blinking Glazier, anti-Glazier freaking rubbish. Forget freaking Glazier. Who gives a blinking monkeys about Glazier? They need to get it right here. The people who are running the club on a daily basis here, and it's not being run right. And the shortchanging the person that's in charge. In my opinion, Ruben Amorim has been shortchanged because they weren't going to give him anything in this transfer window, it seems. And probably the reason for that, whilst it is a bad window, we get that. But the most important one is because they're not sure whether he was the man to carry it to go on next season at the helm. And the person who they're thinking of bringing in would end up inheriting players that he probably doesn't want.
Yeah. Anything more to add, Brent, before we wrap up the show? Good show. Mostly Manchester United, but no football for us. We're back in action next week, aren't we?
Just a minute. At the moment, if you've got a speedboat, there'd be more chance of having a speedboat on that pitch.
Yeah, we've got the Henley Regatta coming next week. Hey, can you imagine that? We're drinking Pims on the terrace.
Yeah,
drinking and eating prawn sandwiches.
Listen, don't know about drinking pins. I'm on bloody pins because I need some money in the bloody place.
On that note, enjoy your Sunday, mate. I'll see you next
See you
week.
later, pal. Bye.
Great show,
Bye. Bye.